In 2011, Germany, an industrial giant run by a quantum physicist, shut down 8 perfectly safe nuclear plants, spending $500 billion to swap one form of clean energy for another. Power prices tripled, emissions barely fell, and when Russian tanks crossed into Ukraine, factories faced bills 10 times higher overnight. This is how a nation's green revolution became an economic disaster, and why other countries risk following the same path. How did the experts get it so wrong? March 11, 2011. A tsunami sweeps through Fukushima, Japan, flooding a coastal nuclear plant and triggering a meltdown. Thousands of miles away, Germany has no major earthquakes, no tsunami risk, and a fleet of 17 nuclear reactors quietly supplying a quarter of the nation's electricity. Yet within 72 hours, Chancellor Angela Merkel, chemist, scientist, and head of government, orders an immediate shutdown of Germany's 8 oldest reactors, all built before 1980. The decision lands like a thunderclap. These plants had just received life extensions the year before after engineers and regulators declared them safe for decades more. Now, overnight, 8.8 gigawatts of zero-carbon baseload power vanish from the grid. Merkel's cabinet scrambles to justify the move, citing safety reviews. But the science has not changed. What has changed is the political weather. Hundreds of thousands protest in the streets. State elections loom in Baden-Württemberg, a CDU stronghold for nearly 6 decades. The ruling party loses to the Greens in a stunning upset 2 weeks later, and the message is clear: fear wins votes. Parliament moves quickly. By June 30th, 2011, the Bundestag votes 513 to 79 to permanently retire the 8 reactors and phase out the rest by 2022. Over 80% of lawmakers, from Conservatives to Greens, back the plan. The Bundesrat rubber stamps the law in July. The world's most advanced industrial economy has just thrown away its cleanest, most reliable power source, not because of a German disaster, but because of panic over a Japanese one. The hole left behind will need to be filled, and fast. The nuclear shutdown left a gaping hole in Germany's power grid, but the solution was not to build more reliable energy. Instead, the country launched into a spending spree. Over the next decade, the energy vendor, Germany's energy transition, would swallow an estimated $500 billion. Wind turbines sprouted across fields, solar panels covered rooftops, and high voltage lines were planned to stitch the country together. But for all the money poured in, the numbers told a different story. Electricity prices soared, more than doubling since 2000, and reaching levels 2 to 2.5 times higher than the USA average. By 2020, Germans were paying the highest household electricity rates in the developed world. The logic was supposed to be simple: replace clean nuclear with clean renewables. But the reality was more like smashing your furnace before the new heating system is installed. The country did not add new capacity, it spent billions just to run in place. And when the wind stopped blowing or the sun disappeared during the infamous Dunkelflaut, the dark windless periods that blanket Germany every winter, coal-fired plants, especially the dirtiest lignite burners, had to roar back to life. Carbon emissions barely budged for a decade. In 2010, emissions stood at 813 million tonnes. By 2020, after hundreds of billions of dollars spent, the number was still hovering around 739 million tonnes. The world's boldest green experiment had become a treadmill, endless motion with no real progress. Meanwhile, the bill kept climbing and German industry started looking for the exit. Nord Stream 1 began pumping Siberian gas directly into Germany in 2011. The pipeline stretched over 1,200 kilometers beneath the Baltic Sea, bypassing Ukraine and Poland entirely. For Berlin, this was more than an energy project. It was a bet on stability through trade. The logic was simple: the more you buy from Russia, the less likely Moscow is to turn off the tap. German politicians called it Wandel durch Handel, which means change through trade. The belief was that economic ties would guarantee security, even if it meant deepening reliance on a single supplier. The ownership structure looked reassuring on paper. Gazprom, Russia's state gas giant, held the controlling stake, but major German companies like Wintershall and E.ON were also partners. This consortium was supposed to ensure mutual interests, with contracts locking in long-term supply. When Nord Stream 2 was announced in 2015 and completed by September 2021, it doubled the direct capacity for Russian gas, again bypassing Eastern European transit routes. By 2021, over 55% of Germany's natural gas imports came from Russia, funneled straight to the heart of German industry. That left Germany dangerously dependent. The pipelines were celebrated as engineering marvels and symbols of partnership. Critics in Warsaw and Kyiv warned of danger, but in Berlin, the mood was confident. Russian gas would keep the lights on and the factories running, no matter what happened elsewhere. The risk of putting so many eggs in one basket was brushed aside in favour of cheap, abundant fuel. For more than a decade, the strategy seemed to work. Then the world changed. February 2022 shattered the illusion of energy security overnight. Russian troops crossed into Ukraine, and within days, gas flows along the Nord Stream pipeline slowed to a trickle. Spot prices on Europe's gas exchanges exploded. What cost €70 per megawatt hour in January soared to over €700 by late summer. For German factories, the math was brutal. A plant that budgeted €1 million a month for energy now faced bills 10 times higher. The world's fourth largest economy watched as its industrial backbone buckled under costs that no spreadsheet could justify. Utility giant Uniper, once a pillar of German power supply, teetered on the edge of collapse. Locked into contracts with Gazprom but cut off from supply, Uniper hemorrhaged billions of euros. By July, the government stepped in with a rescue package that ballooned to €30 billion. Shareholders were wiped out and the state took control just to keep the lights on. Economy Minister Robert Habeck found himself on an emergency tour of the Persian Gulf, pleading with oil-rich monarchs for liquefied natural gas. New liquefied natural gas terminals sprang up on the North Sea coast, built at breakneck speed. But no amount of improvisation could undo decades of dependency. The price spike ripped through every corner of the economy, from steel mills to bakeries. For the first time in a generation, German industry faced the real possibility of shutting down, not from lack of demand, but from lack of affordable power. BASF, the world's largest chemical producer, once ran its Ludwigshafen headquarters like a small city. The sprawling site consumed as much natural gas as Switzerland, churning out everything from ammonia to plastics. But by 2023, the numbers no longer added up. Energy bills had multiplied, and the company announced a permanent downsizing of its European operations. At Ludwigshafen alone, 2,600 jobs vanished. The ammonia plant, one of the core pieces of Germany's industrial machine, shut its doors. Instead of investing at home, BASF poured $10 billion into building a new complex in Zhanjiang, China. The logic was simple: go where energy is cheap and reliable, or risk being priced out of global markets. Across Germany, production in energy-intensive sectors fell by 20%. It was not just chemicals. Makers of glass, paper and steel all faced the same choice: cut back or leave. For thousands of skilled workers, the promise of stable, well-paid jobs disappeared almost overnight, replaced by the uncertainty of a shrinking industrial base. Promises of a seamless green transition collided with the realities of physics and politics. Wind power is abundant in the north, but Germany's industrial heart beats in the south. The Suedlink transmission line, meant to bridge the gap, was supposed to be finished by 2022. Now the earliest estimate is 2028. In the meantime, billions are wasted. In 2022 alone, €4.2 billion went to wind operators for electricity the grid could not handle. That power never reached a single home or factory. For ordinary Germans, the price of policy is written in bank statements and renovation bills. The new heating law bans oil and gas boilers in new homes, pushing millions toward heat pumps. Retrofitting an old house costs anywhere from €20,000 to €50,000. Most German homes are drafty, built for a different age. Pensioners are told to take out loans just to keep warm. Headlines warn of a heat hammer winter. Discontent simmers. The far-right AfD party surges in polls, fueled by anger over costs and mandates. Meanwhile, French nuclear plants quietly deliver power with a carbon footprint 6 to 8 times lower than Germany's. The gap between ambition and reality grows wider, and the social strain is impossible to ignore. Germany now imports nuclear power it once rejected, and it faces industrial decline as energy costs soar. As nations race to decarbonize, the German lesson is stark. Ideology without engineering bankrupts progress. Energy policy is not just about carbon, it is about survival. The next crisis is only one bad decision away.